When Bojack spirals, he takes his feelings of inadequacy or depression out on those around him. While Bojack compulsively tears down those close to him, Mr. Peanut Butter lifts them, often the same exact people, up. Mr. Peanut Butter confronts dilemmas head on, whereas Bojack almost always runs from his problems, lies, or sabotages those around him in order to protect himself. From the outside, Bojack's life is great, and he's achieving everything he ever wanted, but can't help being his own worst enemy. These words come from an article published to IGN.com on September 5th, 2017, and I love everything about them. The reason why that date, September 5th, 2017, is so important is because that is just 3 days before the release of BoJack Horseman Season 4. And the reason why I love this article, which is literally titled Why Mr. Peanut Butter is the Real Hero of BoJack Horseman, is because it pretty much perfectly sums up the amazing amount of character development that Mr. Peanut Butter has gone through from Season 1 to 5. This article, written for IGN by freelance writer Lauren Lavin, exemplifies the feelings that many of the show's fans had about Mr. Peanut Butter going into Season 4. He was the fun, happy, intensely loving dog man that, while being a bit much at times, stood as the beacon of joy in a show filled to the brim with depressed, lonely, broken characters.
The point is, I'm going to be here for you 24/7, 247%. That's how there for you I'll be.
He is the perfect contrast to Bojack, which Lauren Lavin's article makes sure to note. They are both rich, middle-aged television celebrities, but the way that Mr. Peanut Butter copes with the struggles that come along with such status are more or less viewed as functional and healthy, while Bojack's coping mechanisms are dangerously dysfunctional.
You said it with your actions.
What actions?
Oh, look at that baby! Isn't he the cutest baby you ever saw?
What? No, what?
Where Bojack harms others, Mr. Peanut Butter heals. Where Bojack hates, Mr. Peanut Butter loves. And if I'm being honest, I probably would have agreed with Lauren Lavin and her article at the time of its publishing. Across the first 3 seasons, I saw Mr. Peanut Butter as a happier and healthier version of Bojack. Many of you fans probably might have too. But on September 15th, 2017, a week after Bojack Season 4 premiered on Netflix, the website Dot and Line posted an article titled, "If you think Mr. Peanut Butter is better off than Bojack, think again." Let me read you a section that I feel captures the spirit of the article. For many, Mr. Peanut Butter seemed, across Bojack's first 3 seasons, to be the most put-together character in Bojack's cast. But dogs can't be people, and people can't be dogs. He often seems vapid, but such is the lot of one tasked with needing approval at any cost. He avoids that conceptualization though, because to acknowledge it would be to acknowledge the impossibility of achieving the only thing he truly desires, and the only thing he wishes to give to others: unconditional love. It's an addiction as real as booze or dope. It's just less tangible and harder to explain. In some ways, it might even be harder to quit. That makes it, in its own way, even more dangerous. A meager 10 days separates the publishing of the IGN article and the Dot and Line article, yet these 2 write-ups could not have any more opposing views on Mr. Peanut Butter as a character. The IGN article hails him as a hero who helps those around him, while the Dot and Line article argues that Mr. Peanut Butter has an addiction to affirmation that is a danger to himself and maybe even others. Of course though, the catalyst for this drastic difference in opinions was the release of BoJack Horseman Season 4 on September 8th, 2017. And to throw another of course in here, neither of these articles are definitive canon statements about the moral makeup of Mr. Peanut Butter. These articles were not written by the creators, but that doesn't mean they are without value. What these contrasting articles do is give us a picture of the BoJack Horseman audience's characterization of Mr. Peanut Butter before Season 4 and then after Season 4. And now in 2019, with Season 5 far behind us, I will go one step further and share my own opinions about Mr. Peanut Butter. I dislike him more than any other character in the show. And I love that I can say that. Somehow, someway, a character I perceived in Season 1 to be genuinely pleasant and good, I now perceive to be a toxic, cowardly liar. And amazingly, that transformation never felt rushed or jarring or out of place. It really just felt like the more time I spent with Mr. Peanut Butter and the more I learned about him, the less I liked him on a personal level. What we can do now in this video is explore the techniques and choices the show's creative team used regarding character development and how they have progressed Mr. Peanut Butter from Season 1 to 5. Before we get into that though, I just want to give a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, Campfire. Campfire is an incredibly helpful writing software that basically acts as an all-in-one organizer for a writer. The parts of Campfire that I'm actually head over heels for are the character tools. Being a fantasy novelist, I have made quite literally hundreds of characters across my 5 different books. My usual method of keeping track of them is just putting their names down in a Word document and wishing myself luck. But with Campfire, there is an entire dedicated section for detailing characters, their backstories, personalities, physical traits, and even art if you want to include that. And if it weren't enough, there is a feature where you can organize how characters are narratively related, and even give characters their own detailed encyclopedia pages. As someone who reads the A Song of Ice and Fire Wikipedia page for fun and wishes desperately that he could do something similar for his own fantasy world, this encyclopedia section of Campfire is a godsend for me. The same crazy amount of organization can be used for world building too. Campfire allows you the option to upload maps and add in pins to keep track of all specific locations of importance. This is all done through a really easy to use drag and drop system on a clean, user-friendly interface. Great channels like Hello Future Me and Shadiversity agree with me in thinking pretty highly of Campfire. Most importantly though, they help support my channel in a huge way, which means that I have the resources to create better content for you guys. So let's support Campfire in the same way. For all you writers out there who are interested, I will leave a link in the description below. Now, getting back to Mr. Peanut Butter, to understand his character development, we have to talk about what kind of character he is. There are two real classifications that can be used to describe a character. Number one is what type of character they are, and number two is what role that character fills. Let's tackle character type first. We can look to British novelist E.M. Forster for some guidance on this topic. And just in case you were wondering why we should care what this guy has to say, his 16 nominations for the Nobel Prize in Literature gives him a wee bit of authority on writing. In Forster's book, Aspects of the Novel, which he published in 1927, he defines two basic character types. He writes about flat characters and round characters. Flat characters are two-dimensional in that they are relatively uncomplicated. These are also referred to as static characters. By contrast, round characters, also called dynamic characters, are complex figures with many different characteristics that undergo development or change. These are the two types of characters, and Forster wasn't trying to get complicated with them. There are those that change across a narrative, and those that don't. By definition, since Mr. Peanut Butter experiences change across the series, character development, he is a dynamic character. Next, we can look at the role of a character, which is a basic summation of their purpose in the narrative. The most commonly known roles are the protagonist, whose goal is the focus of the plot, and the antagonist, who wants to keep the protagonist from achieving their goal. But there are many other roles in writing, like the deuteragonist, the tritagonist, the rival, the focal character, the straight man, the love interest, and on and on. However, the role I want to focus on is fairly well known and has a fairly weird name, the foil. Now, for those of you who care, and especially for those of you who don't, the name is directly ripped from a technique used by jewelers. They would slip an extremely thin sheet of metal, aka foil, behind the gemstone of a ring or necklace, causing the foil to act as a reflector for the gem in front of it, increasing the light that bounced from it and therefore increasing the gemstone's shine. The foil would literally highlight the gem. Storytellers heard of this technique and, like the depraved, insatiable thieves that they are, stole it to use with their own characters. For centuries, narratives have included a character whose main purpose is to highlight the attributes of another character. They are the foil to that character. And since you are probably getting what I'm leading up to, I will just come out and say it. Mr. Peanut Butter's narrative role is a foil, and the character he highlights is Bojack. If the contrast wasn't quite obvious enough with Bojack being a horse with a long face and Mr. Peanut Butter being a bouncy, happy dog, the show introduces Bojack and Mr. Peanut Butter alongside each other as a comparison of personalities. They are both rich, middle-aged television celebrities who even starred on similar shows, but where Bojack copes with such a lifestyle by being a vicious alcoholic, Mr. Peanut Butter is outwardly pleasant and positive. If Mr. Peanut Butter wasn't in the show, we of the audience might be more sympathetic to Bojack, thinking, of course he's broken, he has to deal with the emotional baggage that Hollywood creates. That would break anyone. But since Mr. Peanut Butter does exist and is so positive and upbeat, it casts Bojack's shortcomings in a light that reflects negatively on Bojack as a person, rather than on his circumstances. A huge part of Mr. Peanut Butter's character in Season 1 is look at what Bojack could be if he tried. So with all that said, we can finally pin down what type of character Mr. Peanut Butter is, a dynamic foil. Except, he's not really. One of the things that makes Mr. Peanut Butter's character development across the series so incredible is that it literally transcends types and roles. Let me explain. In Season 1, it is pretty clearly established that Mr. Peanut Butter is a foil, as we've talked about. But there is an aspect of this particular role that we have not yet considered. By definition of a foil's narrative purpose being to highlight another character, the foil only exists to further that character's plotline. To fulfill their purpose, the foil must interact with either the highlighted character's conflict or their goal. because doing so allows for a comparison for how each of them approaches the situation. To make things a bit more clear, because I know that was really confusing, Season